Lesson 37: Warehousing. Warehousing is the major component of physical distribution. It is also the process of storing physical goods before they are sold or further distributed. There are two distinct and equally important parts designing a warehousing system. The first one is the physical job of creating and running the network of storage points. The second one is the managerial task of controlling inventory levels without sacrificing service levels. Designing a warehousing system. How many warehouses should we have? Where should we locate them? What should be the size or capacity of each of them? The cost-service tussle. When we look closely at these questions, two interesting but conflicting points emerge. Salesmen and channels always pled for greater convenience in delivery and consequently more warehouses. But maintaining a large network of warehouses is a costly proposition. Thus, there is an inherent tussle between cost and service in warehousing decisions. Warehousing to be tackled as part of physical distribution system. While designing a warehousing system, the fact that warehousing is part of overall distribution job should be borne in mind. The warehousing design should fit smoothly into the overall distribution design, which includes physical distribution elements like transportation plus channel arrangements. Warehousing, a partly fixed and partly adjustable entity. In most cases, it may be up to view demand in a given territory as consisting of a constant component and a transient component, which is to be added or subtracted from or mostly added to the constant component. Past sale corresponds to the constant component. Changes occurring in demand in the current period corresponds to the transient component. Thus, in the nature of things, warehousing will have a constant component plus a variable component. And there is some scope for adjustment in warehousing of products depending on the market behavior or company's performance. Warehousing job can be taken care of in different ways. Hire warehousing service from public warehousing agencies. Own the godowns and manage warehousing through company staff. Entrust warehousing to C&F agents, stockists, or distributors. Determining the number, location, and size of warehouses. Determining the locations and capacities of the warehouses is the crux of the task. On this depends the firm's customer service level, its competitive advantage in distribution, and its inventory cost structure. While one might point out that it is the inventory turnaround that primarily determines inventory cost, the fact remains that the costs are also influenced by the locations and spread of the inventories at how many places and what sizes are stocks kept. Determining the number. The optimum number will depend upon the nature of the product, the size and geographical spread of the market serviced by each warehouse, the current and potential sales in the territory, the extent of seasonality of demand if applicable, the level of peak demand, the trade patterns, the number of distributions retail outlets to be serviced by each warehouse, the acceptable order execution time, the possible speed of replenishment of stocks, and the cost involved in operating warehouses. Future requirements and pattern of competition are also relevant factors in deciding the number and sizes of the warehouses. Choosing the size. The decision on the size of the warehouses must be taken in alignment with the decision on their total number. After a firm assesses the sales potential in each warehouse territory, the question to be decided is what is the optimum inventory holding needed for realizing the sales projected for the territory. Warehouse size and cost are inversely interrelated. So as a general rule, small size warehouses are uneconomic compared to larger ones. At the same time, if the sales projected are small, warehouse size has to be small. Customer convenience and channel service will call for a large number of small-sized warehouses spread extensively all over the marketing territory. The last one is choosing the exact locations. Choosing the exact locations of the warehouses is as important as choosing their number and capacity. The locations must be suitable in terms of market factors and availability of transport facility, rent rates, commercial suitability of the location, implications of local levies. Improving warehousing effectiveness. Warehousing effectiveness can be improved by adopting scientific methods and by taking the support of IT. In the larger context, however, warehousing effectiveness depends squarely on the right policies of physical distribution. Scientific warehouse layout in itself facilitates warehousing effectiveness. The layout or design must be suitable for the product concerned and the nature of storage and in-out operations. Warehousing effectiveness also improves when the handling and movement of items within the warehouse is minimized. This applies especially to large warehouses and products involving extensive storage, receiving, and issue operations. Every time an item is moved within the warehouse, it means an opportunity for damage to the item, and each lifting of the item fatigues the package. Lesson 38. Impact of it on physical distribution. Introduction. Recent advances in information technology have enabled low-cost and efficient inter-organizational information sharing, or IOS, relationships between firms adjacent on the supply chain. These arrangements have been prevalent in the automotive industry for many years. For instance, Chrysler mandates that all its suppliers be able to interface electronically with their logistics management information systems. However, of late, iOS arrangements have become more varied and have also become common in a number of other industries, in particular between large commercial retailers and their suppliers of OTC or over-the-counter goods. The level of information sharing. The diversity of information content in the numerous sharing options makes it seemingly impossible to classify the nature or level of information sharing. For example, some suppliers share inventory position information of the products a certain supplier sells them. This information may be transmitted daily or weekly. The level of detail also varies. There are suppliers who see the store-level day-to-day point of sales information. There is a great deal of variety here as well. Some see only products, UPCs, and quantities, while others have access to temporal sales distribution and customer profiles. Other buyers transmit order quantity payment and cost information using EDI. This is a situation where the volume of information exchange may be great, but its impact on the operations of the firms are relatively low. If one examines information from another perspective, the problem simplifies a great deal. Treat the level of information shared not based on what its exact content or volume is, but rather based on the impact it has on the operations, sales, marketing, and production strategies of the parties that contract to share the information. The first level involves increased cost and time-effective exchange of transaction-level information through EDI. The second level involves sharing select operational informations such as inventory levels in order to exploit superior expertise across organizational boundaries and improve operating efficiency. At the third level, the information shared has strategic value to the party that receives the information. And finally, at the highest level, the information adds both strategic and competitive value to the party that receives it. Summary and insights. Corporations have long been aware of how information systems can allow them to operate across organizational boundaries. However, there has not been much research into the competitive implications of these iOS arrangements. This has also been significant concern on the part of suppliers who see no tangible benefits accruing to them from different information sharing arrangements. Lesson 39. Implication of supply chain management in physical distribution. What is a supply chain management? A supply chain is the set of entities that collectively manufactures a product and sells it to an endpoint. In this sense, supply chains are like value-added chains. However, they include only players that add value in production and distribution. The concept of a supply chain is narrower than that of a value-added chain, but it is broader than the idea of marketing channels. These go from factory to buyer. A supply chain goes back to a more distant starting point, the suppliers of the factory, that makes whatever is being sold by the suppliers. Indeed, the beginning point of a supply chain is somewhat arbitrary, although it usually is considered to include only the immediate suppliers of the factory that produces finished goods. A supply chain is also distinctive in that it ends with the ultimate buyer, the customer of someone's customer. The end of the supply chain is the last invoice. Efficient Consumer Response, or ECR, is a landmark in marketing channels. As a movement, it has wrought radical change in the US grocery industry, and that change is spreading to other sectors and other countries. Its success is surprising given how different it is from the usual operating methods of most channels. Indeed, ECR is so successful that some critics are now declaring it outdated and looking for a new movement to replace it. As initially proposed, the idea is to focus on 4 areas where the industry as a whole had and still has great potential for improvement. First is a continuous replenishment program. The goal is to end the bullwhip effect. The method is to use purchase data captured via scanners from the final buyer to inform all upstream supply chain members of demand, right back to the suppliers of suppliers. This requires massive standardization of codes and methods and implementation of ED. Second is efficient pricing and promotions. A scourge of the industry is poorly calibrated promotions that wreak havoc with pricing and buyer behavior. At the consumer level, excessively generous promotions such as one free for one purchase create demand spikes and degrade brand non-equity. Non-targeted promotions encourage price comparisons and brand switching purely for temporary price cuts. At the wholesale level, manufacturer promotions lead to huge demand spikes. These push factory production up too high, then down too low. This in turn pushes inventory up too high, resulting in spoiled food, or down too low, running out of stock. Third is changes in product introduction. Thousands of new product introductions, most of which fail, are endemic to grocery retailing. SCR calls for combining market research commissioned by channel members in order to forecast new product success better on a store-by-store basis or based on reasonable store groupings. Last is changes in merchandising. This is the same idea for the purpose of finding better ways to merchandise brands and their associated categories. For examples, snack foods, pet food, soups, store by store or cluster by cluster. Category management and efficient promotions. Category management sparks thinking about efficient promotions. These can be defined as limited time offers that are win-win for all parties. This means that they move product, the manufacturer is concerned, drive store traffic and category sales, the retailer is concerned, and last is provide added value to the targeted consumer. Continuous Replenishment Planning, or CRP, is the practice of replacing stock based on speedy knowledge of consumer withdrawals. More precisely, in SCM, the term means partnering between distribution channel members in order to replace the traditional practices with a pull system. In this pull system, a retailer's stock is replenished based largely on actual sales data from the end of the supplier chain. The goal is to automate the processes related to warehouse fulfillment and shipping using consumer demand to trigger just-in-time restocking. By automating, SCR practitioners seek to cut errors in processing costs, which are substantial. For example, British grocer Sainsbury's estimates that 1/4 of the chain's supply chain management budget is spent confirming the location and movement of inventory. Benefits of supply chain management. 1. It reduces costs. 2. Improves service. And last is enhanced revenues. 2 kinds of supply chain. 1. Physically efficient supply chain and market-responsive supply chain. Physically efficient supply chain are functional goods, while market-responsive supply chain are innovative goods.